You mentioned Washington. Let me move to that part of this conversation, because obviously over the last 2 years we've seen a huge amount of conversation about Texas versus Washington. In fact, Governor Perry 2 years ago, almost to the day, initiated this conversation on the steps of Boston City Hall. Aren't you Washington? I hear you talk about Washington. You're a United States Senator. You've served now for 9 years. Why are you not part of the problem in that respect? How can you talk about Washington as an out-of-body experience?
Well, I admit I work in Washington. It's a hostile front in this battle that we are fighting in Washington, D.C. That's where my job largely is, but I am not of Washington. I'm a Texan. I believe in the principles, the conservative principles that I think have caused us to prosper while the rest of the country has suffered during this recession.
So who are you talking about when you talk about Washington, if you're not talking about
Well, I guess I'm talking about the establishment. I'm talking about the status quo, business as usual, the blame game, kicking the can down the road, not solving problems. I think if we've seen anything in this last election on November the 2nd, it is that people, the voters, that the American people want elected officials who are willing to take on the hard problems and solve them, as opposed to just pointing the finger of blame or worrying about getting reelected. I think that's one of the reasons that people like Chris Christie has been so phenomenally popular, because he's willing to say things that people believe need to be said and to challenge sort of the sacred cows at the risk of not getting reelected. But that's not the most important thing, getting reelected.
So the notion of Texas versus Washington, again, this has been a dominant conversation in this state for the last several years, whether it's on health care, on EPA regulations, on immigration, whatever else. You believe that there is such a battle and that we need to be fighting it every day. You support the Attorney General, your successor, in filing suit against the federal government to hold back some of this stuff?
I do, and I think it's an important fight. But look, people vote with their feet. I noticed that California delegations come to find out, what's the secret here in Texas to job growth and economic growth. And I don't think it's a mystery. I think we understand it's the policies that make a difference. And if we're going to create an entitlement or a sense of dependency, if that's our goal, well, we can head in one direction. If we're going to create an opportunity society where people have the opportunity to work hard and succeed and keep the fruits of their labor, then we can head in a different direction. And I happen to think Texas is heading in the right direction, while Washington is heading in largely the wrong direction.
Isn't it time to litigate that at the ballot box in November of 2012? In other words, the country voted President Obama and his administration in, just as the country previously voted President Bush and his administration in twice. He's the president of all the states. He's the president of all the people. Isn't there an argument to be made that if you all don't like what the president's doing at the state level, the time to litigate that is at election time as opposed to in the courtroom? You're the party of tort reform, right?
Well, I agree. We ought to operate within the Constitution, and if that takes litigation to resolve that, then so be it. And I support the Attorney General's lawsuit against the health care bill for imposing an unconstitutional individual mandate which exceeds Congress's power under the Commerce Clause. But I think, this is America, where it's a free society. We can debate these issues every day, not just on Election Day. And I think largely the election on November the 2nd was a repudiation. Someone said it's like the American people issued a restraining order on the Obama administration on November the 2nd. It gave us back a divided Congress, which means President Obama can no longer jam his legislative agenda through. He's got to actually get bipartisan support now because of the divided government. And I think that's what the American people wanted. And so I think elections are critical, but I think we also need to have these kinds of discussions and debate every day so people can understand what's at stake. And I really do think the future of our country is what's at stake. I can't think of any more important times in my life for our country being at a crossroads than today. Perhaps the last time we were at such a crossroads was in World War II, when my parents and my father and my wife's father fought in World War II. But I think we are at a crossroads. Are we going to end up like a Western European country, largely a social welfare state, or are we going to be a state and a country that provides opportunity for people to work hard and achieve their dreams, and in the meantime, create a lot of jobs and opportunity for other people?